So now that we've started, let's say hello to a few. We have quite a few returns from previous workshops, which is great to see. Charlotte from Mac in Manchester, Una from Midlothian, and Carly from Age UK Westminster. It's a really great variety of groups and locations in here. Carol from Endeavour Woodcrafts CIC, Katrine from the Community Impact Initiative CIC, Chloe from East Sussex, working with Children with Cancer Fund. Really brilliant to see all of you here today. Thank you for joining us, and I'm sorry if I missed you off there. I had a bit of a wild look through that list of lovely hellos. And leading today's session are Vanessa and Fiorella from 180 Degrees Consulting. And a quick last note before handing over to them. There will be a good amount of time at the end of today's session for Q&A. So if you have any questions about budgeting, about Action Funder, about anything that comes up in today's workshop, then save them for the end or pop them in the chat for safekeeping, and we'll come to them in a short while. It's a quick session today. We like to keep our events short and sweet. We know that everybody's busy and we're probably all hungry for lunch. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Vanessa and Fiorella to pick up today's session.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Perrine, if you could get the slides up, please. So hi everyone, my name is Vanessa and I am a volunteer consultant at 180 Degrees Consulting, and I will be delivering today's webinar on budgeting along with my colleague Fiorella. If you could move to the next slide, please. So after the webinar, which should be just 30 minutes, we'll have the Q&A like Lorna said. Make sure to leave any questions that you have in the chat, or if you want to ask them later, you can unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have for us or Action Funder. Next slide, please.
So as mentioned previously, Vanessa and I work for 180 Consultancy. I'd like to give you a little introduction about us. So our aim is to provide high quality consulting services to social impact organizations so you can improve and expand your services. 180 is at the moment the largest consultancy in the world with the aim to improve the efficiency of non-profits and social enterprises. These organizations typically cannot afford this professional consultancy service, therefore we are helping them. So 180 provided us with training and so then we can help assemble to provide them to develop these workshops. So throughout July and August, we will be helping you and we will give you advice, and so we can increase efficiency within your organizations. Could we move on to the next slide? So today's session is about budgeting, and so let's start with why is budgeting important? So budgeting is the process of creating a plan to spend your money. So we can also call it a spending plan. So creating the spending plan allows you to determine in advance whether you will have enough money to do things that you need or you would like to do. So if you don't have enough money to do so, or everything you would like to do, you can use this planning process to prioritize your spending and focus your money on things that you actually need and things that are the most important to you. Definitely also budgeting could be considered as forecasting and planning. So keeping your finances would also help to keep your finances on track, and having a 6 months to 1 year plan would be the best, it would be ideal. Using a realistic budget to forecast your spending for the year can really help you with your long-term financial planning. And it could also be good for allocating resourcing and also managing cash flow. Could we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so here we've decided to give you like key features of a good budget. So the first one would be being realistic. Therefore, developing a budget based on past results and future projections. So ensuring that both fixed and inevitable costs are considered. I would use past information and develop a more concrete basis for established budget numbers. So maybe determining monthly potential profits and then calculating monthly expenses. And then you could do that for the next few months and then up to a year. So then you would have also a worksheet with all your planning. Next, I would definitely say to be thorough, accurate, and complete, meaning that the best budgeting will have to be detailed so that it will be the most effective. And so give plenty of time to yourself as well to prepare it and review it in case you want to make any changes in the short term or long term. Another point would be if you could have extra money at the end of each month, it would be great. Just if you have any new expensive, any new spending, or maybe any new any emergencies. Next one would be working together towards a mutual goal. So maybe discuss budget with your colleagues or people who have already made a budget, which turned out to be very successful. Maybe at the end of this webinar, someone has done anything new that made their budget, if you have implemented any improvement to your budget or any new feature that and you've seen as a massive success, maybe you could share that tip at the end of the webinar. It would be very good for the other association. And then the last tip that we would like to say, the last thing that we think would make a budget very good would be fit to purpose, which means the right level of detail to the reader. So if you're planning to show the budget to anyone, make sure that you don't write too much or too little. Make sure that it's only focused in the details, and so that we can avoid confusing the reader. Next one.
So now we're talking about this, the three key elements when it comes to making a budget. So this would be planning, doing, and reviewing. So what we mean with planning, we mean the actual process of creating the budget so that you have a plan that you can then execute. And then the second step would be executing, actually spending the funds and implementing the budget you have made. And lastly, it's reviewing. So while you are implementing the budget, you want to make sure that you review it as you go, check whether you're getting sidetracked, are you maybe overspending, are you behind on your plan, and then you can take the necessary steps to get back on track. Now we're going to dive deeper into each of these three main points. So if you could move to the next slide, please. So how can you prepare your budget? So if you want to write your budget, you should start by answering this set of questions because it will make it easier for you to plan and it will make your goals much clearer to you. And throughout this slide, I'll be using the example of community gardens, which I heard from them that it's a very popular community group with Action Funder. So the first question that you need to ask yourself is, what objectives are you trying to achieve? So let's say that your goal is to expand your community garden in 2022. Then you should ask yourself, what activities will be involved in achieving these objectives? So maybe you need to acquire more land. Maybe you need to find volunteers to help you build your garden. Maybe you need to buy more tools, clear the land. Afterwards, you could ask yourself, what resources will you need to carry out these objectives? So maybe in terms of human resources, getting volunteers, getting these tools that you will need, and how much will these resources cost? And we advise you strongly to use a budget worksheet such as Excel. It will really help you create a clear and detailed worksheet. Excel has loads of tools that facilitate calculations. So we really strongly advise you to use a budget worksheet where you need to show all your calculations, research your prices, don't give a rough estimate. And I have included a little sample here of how you could write your budget. So make sure you include the item you're talking about, the cost per unit, as well as quantity, and then the total cost that it would cost you. And afterwards, you could ask yourself, where will these funds come from? And this is where Action Funder comes in, where they will match you with a business that would like to fund your cause. And even if it's not with Action Funder, maybe in the future, other sponsorship opportunities could come up, other fundraising campaigns that you could have. And ask yourself in the end if the result is realistic. You can discuss this as a team because the best budgets are always made with the help of everyone around you. Getting more opinions, different perspectives will help you make the best budget possible. Next slide, please. Now in terms of implementing the budget. So implementing the budget that you have devised will allow you to stay on track. And it's important to things to consider while you are implementing your budget is to ask for your project managers to implement your budget because they know more details about the project and will be able to follow the project more closely and so have a higher ability to implement the budget. Also remind yourself to use the budget as a guide. You know, you wrote it for a reason, so remember to check it frequently to make sure that you are following it thoroughly, and check before spending whether the items have been accounted for in the budget. Another tip we have for you is to try to stay within the budget. Focus on delivering the project objectives within the total budget rather than spending all the money that you have outlined. In this way, if there's any money that's left over, you can save it and use it for emergencies. The last tip we have is to have accurate and complete accounting. So keep an accurate and complete record of all the transactions you've made. Well, we don't know whether your funds come with any strings attached, but even in the future, if the funders want to know where their money is going, it's important for you to keep a good record so that you can be transparent and for accountability. Next slide, please.
So now we would like to talk about monitoring the budget, which would be the review. So complete the process by comparing the plan, which is the budget, with the actual outcome. And budget monitoring is crucial for an organization to be able to enforce the accountability related to the spending. So how should it be reviewed? So we've decided to divide this in 4 parts: compatibility, expenditure, monitoring needs, and preventing theft. So first of all, compatibility. So what should it be reviewed? Does the budget follow what you've planned? Is everything on track? So I would advise to review it once a week. And I would also do this by using receipts, changes in policies, review new patterns in the store or in your location of charity organization. Second of all, expenditure in the store. So check your payroll expenses. So if anyone is employed, analyze their payroll and ensure that they're not underpaid or overpaid. Maybe, like Vanessa said, use an Excel worksheet. That would be great. And then also, if there is any other expenditures, such as like we said the other time in our previous workshop, like food for volunteer, that could be great to use it once a week maybe, but make sure you put that in the Excel. And third would be monitoring needs. So including current expenses, also include new goals and initiatives and how the budget would be adapted to around it. And finally, preventing theft. So monitoring funds closely to prevent theft and misuse of funds, and also ensuring that financial problems are solved quickly. So if you review a budget every week or every 2 weeks, if you see that anything is wrong or anything is a bit different, you can solve the problem quickly. But if you review your budget maybe once every 2-3 months, it might be a bit too late and maybe a bit hard to solve the problem. So I would definitely advise to review the budget every 1 or 2 weeks. If I could look at the next slide, please. So here we decided to put our last tips to create a very good budget. So first of all, be organized. So gather all the information you need in advance and quantities, prices. Start early so you can allow yourself as much time as you can to review it and for revision. Second of all, peer review. Get someone to check your budget before you send it off. Mistake can be made easily and go unnoticed. So maybe if you have someone else, they might notice it. Maybe you left off something important. So ask the other person as well if the budget is clear and everything is there. Thirdly, clear calculations. So use a budget worksheet to create a clear calculation and detailed budget, showing all the calculations that are very important. So research prices and don't give an estimation. Make sure that the prices that you put in your budget are the exact ones. And work as a team. So the best budgets are written with the help of those who will help you. So maybe speak to your manager so that would facilitate the whole process and all writing the budget. If I could look at the next slide.
Don't worry if you weren't able to take notes of everything, because we will be gladly handing you over these slides. And we have summarized everything in this last slide of the key points that we mentioned. So the plan, do, and review structure that you should follow when compiling a budget, and the key tips that we have for you. Just to reiterate them, we advise you strongly to be organized, start early and allow plenty of time for revisions to be made, show clear calculations, be accurate and complete when you're accounting, review your budget, ask someone to help you, because mistakes can really easily be made when it comes to numbers, and they're sometimes hard to spot. Work together as a team, get everyone together, get different opinions and perspectives to write the best possible budget that you can, and make it user friendly, have the information displayed very clearly, and make it really easy to read. And that's it for our presentation. So if now you would have any questions for us, please leave them in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, we will be very glad to help you and answer your questions.
Hi, I'm Sharon Jitabala from Sunshine of Hounslow. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
Thank you. I just want to ask you, are you going to send these slides to us as an email, please? So I do struggle with the budget, and that's the area I would like to improve myself. And if I can read all the documents, it'll help me to budget better myself and improve my skills as well. I mean, sometimes, you're trying to do the job and something goes wrong or something comes up, it costs a little bit extra. And then, I mean, it's always not, I do talk to the funders, but sometimes you don't cover the cost, and without realizing this will be supposed to be in the budget. How do we go about it then? How do we go about it if we didn't include it in the budget and something comes up? When it's a new project, you don't cover everything, and because you're not aware of that this much will be needs covering.
This is something that I said on my slide as well. So making sure that maybe at the end of each month there is some extra spending or like something left. So in case there is an emergency or anything. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe you could try and apply for some other fundings, or let me see if Perrine or Lorraine have other advices, maybe something from Action Funder.
yeah.
So one of the things with budgets is that they're always going to be an estimate, and
That's it.
you then align that with actuals. So one of the useful things that you can do when you're keeping a record of your budget is to look at having planned it, you plan it out, and then you review on a weekly or monthly basis,
Yeah,
daily, depending on the type of project that you're doing, and record the actuals of the budget spend. And you'll find that in some areas you'll overspend and in some areas you'll underspend, and that should allow for coming to a total that is aligned with the kind of budget that you set out in the first instance. It's difficult when it comes to being funded according to a budget that you set down in an application, because a funder will expect to see accounting of spend according to your plan. But funders also are human, and they accept that things aren't going to go exactly according to plan at all times. So as
that's right.
long as you have a clear process of this is what I plan to do, this is what has actually happened, and this is how it has all added up in the end,
Yeah,
then they should be fine with that. Unfortunately, it's very rare that a funder will say, oh, you've overspent, we'll give you extra funding. So be aware of that, and the fact that you will have to find funding elsewhere if you do overspend after having sought a particular fund for a particular budget.
True, true. I mean, so it's very rare it happens. What we then normally do is just do what we're supposed to do and always discuss with the funders that this comes up. I mean, we did apply for funding and we did realize we need a ramp for the shed because of the disability, also taking the tools in and out, heavy tools from the shed. But now we need a ramp, so we had to stop and let the ramp wait till we apply for the next funding.
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of the things that is important is to, as the 180 team said, plan with your team to really get together and think of all potential options so that you have a clear and kind of whole view of the project in front of you so that you
Yeah.
can plan your budget properly. But of course things do come up, so yeah, that's hopefully helpful for you. I'm just going to go to a couple of questions in the chat.
Thank you.
Vanessa and Fiorella, would you like to pick up some of the questions that have popped up in the chat?
Of course. So one of the questions was if there are any tips that we have if you've underspent in your budget. And I think that's totally fine, especially like you said, you had lower volunteer expenses because of the lockdown. And I think a tip I could give is to, save these up, like we mentioned, in case in the future, maybe something breaks, something unexpected happens, you have an emergency, and you can always have these savings with you to spend in case anything goes off the path. So definitely, I think you could save this money to use in the future.
Maybe every time you get a budget or an investment or something, maybe try and put yourself a rule. So let's say you could say to yourself, oh, I'm gonna use 50 for this, 50% for this, 30% for this. And maybe you can say another 10 for this. And then you can say to yourself, oh, this 10%, I'll keep it here just in case of an emergency. I will not touch it for the next few weeks. But then in case anything happened, anything extra, I could use that 10%. Could be an idea.
Another question in the chat is whether staffing costs and administration costs are acceptable expenses in a funding bid. And I think this is more of a question for Action Funder, but
I can pick up this one actually. Carol, so staffing costs and administration costs. So usually funders like to fund projects more than core costs. So what we recommend, it's not impossible to get funded just with administration and staffing costs, but we recommend to add them with project related services related costs. So have some administration in there and then different costs. Sorry, I'm repeating myself a lot. Does that make sense?
We've also oh, I think that might have been a response. Great. We've also had a question about how long funding records and expenses should be kept. Should it all be 10 years? I'm not sure where the 10-year period comes from. I haven't seen 10 years before. I know that for charities, HMRC recommends that you keep all paperwork for 6 years, particularly where gift aid donations are made. That's necessary. In terms of kind of particular funds, some funders ask that you keep expense records for a particular length of time, or they ask that you hand those expense records over and they will keep them on their books for a particular length of time. But I'm afraid I am not an expert in this area. If anyone else has any input on that question, be very happy to hear from anyone. But yeah, as I said, 6 years is the kind of outside length of time that I'm aware that HMRC guides on this.
there any other question or maybe anything you would like to share with other people, something that might have helped you?
It was such a useful, simple and useful thing to think about, that kind of plan, do, review steps on a budget. Really being able to see through the whole process of budgeting to make sure that you can be organised, accurate, remembering the terms that you used, and team and user friendly with your budgeting. So any questions around any of those areas, or anything that, yeah, as Fiorella has just said, if you have any tips for others on the call around how you have done your budgeting, and what has worked, or advice on what not to do, please do jump in and share, or share in the chat.
Lorna, I was going to ask you something. Sorry, I'm taking a little more time to understand better. I was going to send you some documents regarding the grant we were going to apply for. Do we need to send the budgeting with the documents as well? That if we are asking for roughly, if we are asking for, I would say £10,000, do I need to break down the budget with the documents to send you that this is how we're going to spend it as well?
So on Action Funder, if you're applying for a grant on Action Funder, it asks
Yeah.
you, one of the steps in the process is a simple breakdown of your budget. There is there's no requirement for logging spend through receipts.
Okay.
But some funders might ask for that, but our general policy is not to do that. Yeah, there's a balance there. Some funders like to put the trust in the community group or charity,
Yeah.
and allow the spend according to what has been written down in the plan. Others like to see the receipts and proof of spend. So yeah.
So do we need to send you a plan? This is what we want to do,
So
and
no,
how much it will cost.
Action Funder, as part of the Action Funder process, you fill in the budget breakdown of what your project spend will be. So you put that in as part of your project on actionfunder.org, and you don't kind of send anything to a particular person or a particular funder. It's simply setting up a project on the platform, and waiting to be funded.
I'm gonna go through it hopefully this week. I've created the documents already, what our plans are, what we want to do, how much funding we are looking for. They are all ready, but I'm gonna get students to do it online for me because as you can see, I'm a golden age.
Well,
I'm not an IT expert.
it's hopefully a pretty easy to use site. So do have a go, and send over any questions that you have.
It's just a confidence, Lorna. I need somebody with me. I can do the job, but it's just a confidence. I need somebody with me just to guide me, just to reassure me that I'm doing it fine. But we have delivered so many projects since 2012, but it's just the IT skills is my weakness. But I'm expert with so many other organizations and myself as well. We just have a GLA festival this Saturday, and believe me or not, more than expected people turn up.
Oh, brilliant. And,
Yeah.
one of the great things, I know Vanessa and Fiorella shared a really helpful session on volunteer management last week. And one of the great things about volunteers is that you can bring in volunteers to fill in the skill sets that you don't have. So being
Yeah.
able to work with volunteers who can,
It's happening.
yeah,
It's happening.
who
I've just got the thing is volunteers comes and go. That's the only problem. When the old one goes, the new one comes. You have to train them again. So I normally get a university young students comes to work with us, but we have to discipline them. We have to get them to into commitment because they're so young. It's hard to start them in the beginning, but once they start, it's brilliant. But
yeah.
this is what I'm struggling at the moment with the two new students, and but it's brilliant. All the youngsters are superstars for IT skills. No, not us.
Oh, well, do let the Action Funder team know if you need any support with the.
I do, honestly, I do need. Shall I send them an email that I'm
Yeah, I mean,
looking for
there's
little
a chat
support to go
on the
on?
website. There's a chat function, so you can send a note in there, or you can send an email to hello@actionfunder.org.
Okay.
We'll get back to you.
Oh, brilliant. That's done. That's good. Good. Oh, thank you very much. Because of all my documents are ready. You just need to put it uh to the funders together, to your, action funders. And this is the first time we are applying. I'm so excited to looking for funding for children holidays period, so we
Okay.
can train them, they can have activities, family activities at allotment. That's what we are looking for.
Well, yeah, it is quite a simple process on Action Funder where you sign up, you add your organisation details, you post any projects you need funding for, and
Yeah.
then a funder, the relevant funder, will review your application. So we as a team don't, unfortunately, we don't have the power to fund particular projects.
I can understand.
We do provide this service connecting community-based organisations with funders, and you could be a registered charity or an informal group or a community business. All of those types of organisations are welcome to post
But,
projects.
but you're doing brilliant job bringing us a lot of information. You don't sit and look pretty there. You are doing your job and bringing us information. If we don't get information, we can't take the step further. So thank you very much. Brilliant. Both of you, all the girls doing a brilliant job for bringing us information. Sitting at home, we are getting it all on the Zoom.
Good. Well,
Thank
I'm
you.
glad you think so. That's really lovely feedback to receive. Um,
Thank you.
does anyone have any other questions around budgeting or Action Funder, or anything else that you think we might be able to help with? I'll give it a couple of minutes, and if not, we will leave it there. It's been, as I said, really, really helpful to go through that plan, do, review outline on budgeting. And brilliant, Carol, brilliant question on copies of the slides. Perrine will be sending out a follow-up email that will include the copies, a copy of the slides, a copy of the recording of today's session, and we'll also include a link to our YouTube page where you'll find recordings of our previous workshops. And do look out for our upcoming sessions. We have 2 more sessions with 180 degrees, one on the 3rd of August that will cover impact measurement, and one on the 17th of August that will be all about digital marketing, and how to make digital marketing work for your organisation. So the best way to be the first to know about those sessions and when the tickets go live is to sign up to Action Funder, and we will send out an email. And I think that just leaves me to say a big thank you to Vanessa and Fiorella for today's session. So much useful information packed in there. And thanks so much for everyone for coming along. And I think that it's now time for lunch. So let's call it a wrap there. Thanks so much for coming along.